At Sony's E3 2012 press conference, it debuted a game called Beyond Two Souls, essentially the spiritual successor to a game by Quantic Dream that was called Heavy Rain. Now, that game was kind of polarizing. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but this is kind of the next game exclusive to the PlayStation 3. Now, they showed a little bit of the game at the press conference, but we were lucky enough to see about a 40-minute demo of the game, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So, first, a little bit of background. The main character in the game is named Jodie Holmes, and she's played by Ellen Page. For some reason around the offices, everybody loves her. They're very excited that she is the main character in the game. And she plays this girl who has had this link with an invisible entity. She doesn't know if it's a ghost or not. She's been linked to it since she was a child. She calls the entity Aiden. And basically the whole game is the story of their relationship and how they're going to coexist together. It takes place across 15 years of her life. So you play her as basically 3 different periods. You play as a little girl, a teenager, and an adult. And basically it's all about how does she learn to accept what she is, this person that is linked to this other spirit or ghost or whatever it is, they won't really say. And the important thing here to remember is that Aiden, the spirit, is not a power or a pet, and it doesn't really always obey Jodie. It has its own mind and its own way of doing things, and they describe it a little bit like a wild animal, and it's a character all on its own.
I know. They're coming.
So he said there's basically a few things that they're going for with the story, and what he said was that there was growing, death, separation, warning, and then the big question that they're trying to answer with the game is what is on the other side? What is beyond? She's basically confronted with her entire life, and she's trying to figure out, you know, what is on the other side. And when they got Ellen Page, they were trying to find somebody who could embody the role, somebody who is very similar to the person that they are trying to portray in the game. They did the performance capture with her entire face and voice at the same time, which is the same tech that you'll see in James Cameron's Avatar.
You don't talk much, do you?
So right before they started the demo, they said one thing they really wanted to sort of impart into the people who are watching it is that they didn't want us to watch this one section of the game and then extrapolate the way that part is across the entirety of the game. They said, you know, what they learned on Heavy Rain can be incorporated into a more action-driven game. And now that I've seen it, you can definitely see that. There's a lot of quick-time events in this game, but they're kind of bookended by more elaborate action scenes. And basically, you take control of Jodie, and you can also take control of Aiden. Now, while you're in control of Jodie, it's more the traditional Heavy Rain stuff, a lot of quick-time events, even in some cases to do the most simple things. But Aiden, you're kind of this disembodied entity, and Aiden has this sort of mental and spiritual link to Jodie. He can leave her, but he can only go so far. It's almost like a leash that he has. But he has the ability to affect objects in the real world. He can talk to Jodie. It's a language that you can't understand. It sounds like gibberish if you're actually playing the game, but she responds to him as if she can understand what he's saying. He can also possess humans. He can possess animals. And all that is kind of governed by this aura system. And the way it was explained to us is that every human being has its own aura based upon their perspective on things. And that's why certain police officers or whatever can be possessed and other people can't. It all depends on how they've lived their life and what their priorities in life are. Obviously, they don't go that far into detail with each character in the game, but it does kind of give a valid excuse for how you can only possess certain characters and not others. Alright, so as the demo starts, Jodie is asleep on a train. It's late at night, and it's raining really hard outside. And you first start as Aiden, and you're in control of Aiden. And basically controlling Aiden takes a little getting used to. You actually steer him using the 6-axis controls, so you tilt it left or right. And then it kind of almost functions like a racing game. The R2 trigger is kind of the gas, and then the L2 is the brake / go in reverse. You can tap the L1, and that will basically center Aiden's view on an object, and then you look at the color combination to figure out how you can interact with that object. There's also kind of a quick spin around that you can do to be able to turn around and start going the other direction really quickly. It does take a little getting used to. I don't think I've played a game that really uses a 6-axis like this in quite a while. Maybe Flower, I think, might have been the last one. But it does function pretty well once you kind of get a handle on it. So anyway, she's on the train. You take control of Aiden. You kind of mess around with some other people on the train. You knock a drink out of a lady's hand. You fiddle with like some guy's newspaper. You go outside, and next thing you know, the train is starting to come to a halt, and there's an announcement made over the train. It's basically saying, you know, everybody stay seated. We have an emergency stop. So as Aiden, you go outside and you realize the police have stopped the train. And right now, Jody's on the run, so obviously that's a pretty big deal. So as Aiden, you can kind of go out and you can eavesdrop on the police, and you hear them talking about how there's this girl who's wanted for treason, blah, blah, blah. So immediately you realize, yes, they're there for her. So you go back inside the train as Aiden, and now you're trying to wake Jody up because you realize the cops are coming for her. So you wake her up. She gets a little angry with you, says, why are you waking me up? She quickly realizes that there are police inside the train car with her. She stands up and tries to walk away, but they recognize her. So a chase ensues inside the train car. Now, this part we did not get to play ourselves, but the developer said that you are actually controlling Jody as she walks down the train sort of center aisle. She's getting jostled back and forth as the train moves. Don't ask me why the train took off again once the cops got on it. I have no idea. But it does. So the chase ensues. She eventually hides in the bathroom. The cops, for whatever reason, don't break down the door. She has enough time to get a hatch open, again using the 6-axis and some quick time events to try to get the hatch open. She gets on top of the train. Chase ensues on top of the train. You have some fisticuffs with the cops. Again, all quick time events, mostly with the right analog stick and the shoulder buttons. Ultimately, she gets cornered, and she has to make a jump for it. So she jumps from the top of the train while it's going, and as she does this, Aiden actually protects her. He builds this sort of protective barrier around her while she's jumping. So when she does finally land on the ground, he actually keeps her from getting injured. So this is where the game, from my perspective, gets really impressive from a visual level. So suddenly she's running through the woods. She lands in the woods. She hears the cops coming. She sees flashlights. She hears dogs barking. So she takes off running through the woods. And I have to say that throughout this entire demo, I never saw Jody move the same way. I never saw her walk the same way, run the same way. She's constantly reacting to her environment, but again, lots of quick time events as she tries to evade them through the forest. Eventually, the dogs catch up to her. Again, more quick time events. She smashes one of the dogs in the head with a rock. Eventually, the dogs run off. She ventures through the woods some more. She comes to a big cliff face. Climbs the cliff face. Just as she gets to the top, the cops catch up to her. They're like, oh, she could never climb up this, and they give up. Well, she looks up above. There's the road again, and there's a roadblock with cops. So what she says, Aiden, take care of this. So basically what you do is you go up as Aiden onto the road, and they showed us several ways that you can handle this. There's a motorcycle sitting up there. You can go up and possess one of the cops. One time the cop got into a truck and started going back and forth, like ramming it between the guardrails. Another time he took a gun and just started randomly shooting into the air. Either way, it distracted the other police officers so that Jody was able to get on the motorcycle and take off. So now you're riding on this motorcycle down the road. Again, you're using the 6-axis to steer the motorcycle. We did not get to play this section either. But I did notice the developers even had problems keeping the motorcycle off the rails here, so maybe it's something that they just haven't fine-tuned yet, but it seemed to be a little difficult. Ultimately, she comes to another roadblock. Basically, the main bad guy from the SWAT team is there on the other side of the bridge. She stops. They kind of eye each other down. She again calls on Aiden and says, look, you're going to need to help me here. So she just basically floors the bike. She goes running right at the roadblock, and Aiden basically blows all the cars out of the way. She continues on. Eventually, she gets into town. And this is really one of the first scenarios in the demo where you can see that there's a lot of different ways to do something. Essentially, Jody's kind of hunkered down, and it's all on Aiden at this point to get her out of this situation. There are literally, I don't know, 10 or 12 different SWAT vehicles here. Well over a dozen soldiers, snipers on the roof. Essentially what you do is you create distractions by possessing cars and then flipping them upside down, or by possessing the SWAT team members and either having them shoot other SWAT team members, shoot themselves, which you can get them to do, or you can take control of the sniper on the roof and just clear people out. So eventually you get to the point where you need to kind of possess this clock that's at the square. And what it does is once you possess it, it kind of breaks and falls over, and that sort of gives Jodie an opportunity to escape inside an old theater. So that's pretty much where the demo ended. They did show us one alternate sort of route through it where you actually get arrested. And once she gets arrested, you end up getting into the SWAT vehicle. During the ride, you possess one of the cops inside the SWAT vehicle. You get him to sort of either shoot or distract everyone else in the vehicle. The vehicle flips over and it crashes. And then both of them ended the same way, no matter how you finished it. And that was with her talking to the head of the SWAT team as he lay on the ground almost unconscious, basically saying, "Don't mess with me. Next time I'm going to kill everybody." And then that's where the demo closes.
Tell them to leave me the fuck alone, because next time, I'll kill everyone.
Overall, my impressions, I was a little surprised how similarly it played to their prior game. Heavy Rain is one of those games that people either love or hate. So I was a little surprised that they kind of went back into that route. But at the same time, it is refreshing to play as Aiden, because it does give you a lot more flexibility in how you handle everything. I would probably prefer to play it with an analog stick at this point in the game, not necessarily with the 6-axis though.
Come on, Aiden. I think they get the message.
There was a short Q&A session after the demo, and a couple questions that were asked were pretty good. One asked if there would eventually be move support in the game. They mentioned that that would be a possibility. Someone asked what happens when Jodie dies. They said that she cannot die in this game, in fact. She will not ever die, unlike Heavy Rain. And if you fail the story, it just takes the story on to a different route and it continues on. And then I asked them, actually, when we did an interview, how far it kind of strays off the beaten path and if ultimately it does diverge into this sort of main arc. And they said that there are multiple endings in the game that change pretty drastically, and that while certain threads do kind of ultimately come back to the main plot, there are some towards the end of the game, and again, a lot like Heavy Rain, where at a certain point when you start cracking away, you keep going off in that direction to get your unique ending. So in a lot of ways it's like Heavy Rain, but I do feel like it has its own twist with Aiden, and you guys should definitely look out for it exclusively for the PlayStation 3. They have not announced a release date yet.